Welcome into Outkick the Show, boys and girls. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having good Mondays wherever across this great country or this great world you might find yourself. All right, we're going to start off with Georgia, Alabama. And I want to hit you with a couple of different stats off the top here. I have tweeted them out, but I want you guys to pay attention to them. Georgia and Alabama have played 120 minutes in the past 11 months. 60 minutes plus overtime, so a little bit over 120 minutes, but not with the clock running in overtime, plus 60 minutes on Saturday. During the time when the clock has been running, Georgia has either led or been tied for 119 of those minutes. They ended up losing both games. Also, they led or were tied for every play of overtime except for the final play of overtime as well. Why does that happen? How is it that Georgia, other than the fact that Georgia's all the time, how is it that they can be so even with Alabama and yet lose at the crucible moment and lose in such excruciating fashion? In the national title game, they beat Jalen Hurts, and Tua came in and ignited his Heisman Trophy campaign over the next year, but he ignited it starting then. And then Tua gets knocked out of the game, and Georgia brings and Alabama brings in Jalen Hurts and rolls through Georgia, even though they're down 7 points, scoring 2 touchdowns in the final 7 minutes or so. So let me break it down for you. First of all, I think that Georgia fans, rather than be focused on Alabama right now, should be focused on another game that mattered more so this year. If I'm Georgia and I'm looking back at our season, I'm much more troubled by what happened against LSU than I am by what happened against Alabama. I think Alabama's better than Georgia. I think Jake Fromm played over his head. I thought he played extraordinarily well. Georgia getting up 28-14 was, I believe, Georgia playing flawless football. Okay? So, within that context, the question that I have is, how has Georgia not shown up for at least one game every year during Kirby Smart's tenure so far? Georgia got beat by 31 by Ole Miss in year one in a game that I believe they were the favorite in. They got beat by 23 last year by Auburn, and they got beat by LSU by 20, 36-16 this year. If Georgia beats LSU or keeps it close against LSU, then there isn't the same outrage, I don't think, about what happens against Alabama. I think the rage is misguided for Georgia fans. I think it should be directed more at the performance we saw against LSU. Give up 475 yards, allow LSU to rush for 250. That's the game that, to me, is an aberrant one. Having said that, I think Kirby Smart's decision to go for it on 4th and 11 is one of the worst decisions that I have ever seen in a crucible moment from a coach, given the probabilities, the circumstances, and everything else. Taking a risk is fine. Taking an irrational risk that is self-evident to everybody that is on the field is not. And let me explain exactly what I mean by that. It's 4th and 11. 4th and 11 is a low probability of success regardless of the play. Even if you had Jake Fromm in your offense out there, the majority of the time you are not going to convert 4th and 11. 4th and 11 when you trot out Justin Fields, who is not ordinarily on your punt team, is the equivalent of screaming, "Hey, y'all, we're going to fake it now." Once you make the decision to trot out Justin Fields onto the field, everybody out there can see that they are going to run that play. Everybody. So at that point in time, you got an audible, or you're basically saying, we'd rather go 4th and 11 with Justin Fields than we would 4th and 11 with Jake Fromm. Given the circumstances, you have to punt the football there and make Alabama drive. Because Alabama, we know, has had a woeful and woebegone history of making field goals. You've got Jalen Hurts on the field. Make him go the length of the field and beat you, or make Alabama make a field goal to beat you. Instead, when you get stuffed like they did on that play, when Alabama is in punt safe and knows exactly what they're going to do, because guess what? Justin Fields hasn't thrown the ball hardly all year. There's no uncertainty there. You don't have the element of surprise. There's no artifice. There's no trickeration. You're running a poor offensive set against Alabama's defense. It was just not an intelligent play call by Kirby Smart. And basically what it meant to me was Kirby Smart is starting to acknowledge at that point, we aren't as good as Alabama. It's like when a team goes for two when they tie a game up late rather than kick extra points. Effectively, what you're saying when you go for two is, I don't believe my team is as good as the other team. I want to end it right here. That's what I see a lot of times. When Maryland goes for two against Ohio State. When the Titans went for two against the Chargers. Now, that might be true. They might be the inferior team. But if you're Georgia and you've played Alabama evenly for 119 out of 120 games, why in the world would you make that decision? It's nonsensical to me. I don't understand it. I don't comprehend it. It is, I think, mismanagement of the highest magnitude. It's coaching malpractice. And it cost Georgia not only the SEC championship, but also, I believe, a spot in the playoff. Because it would have been a tougher argument, I believe, to make that Georgia didn't belong in the playoff if they'd taken the game to overtime again against Alabama. I think a lot of people would have sat back and said, well, they lost one game in regulation and they lost one game in overtime. I think it would have helped them out a little bit more in terms of having a chance to make the playoff. Georgia blew it. In the crucible moment, Kirby Smart made a bad decision. I think a big part of it is that Justin Fields, Georgia is so concerned about him transferring that they've wasted offensive plays with him all year. The offense has done nothing substantial with Justin Fields on the game, on the field, in difficult and important moments. And it's basically Kirby Smart saying over and over again, please don't transfer Justin Fields. I don't think you can run a program like that. Because Jake Fromm looks like a first-round quarterback. Justin Fields is nowhere near as good as him. And I think the reason they had that play there, and I think the reason they ran it, is because Kirby Smart is afraid that Justin Fields is going to transfer. And my answer to that would be, so what? The reason why you bring in a multitude of challenging players is to have them compete. There's something about the quarterback position that turns otherwise intelligent coaches into imbeciles. Let them compete. The best man wins the job. Jake Fromm is infinitely better than Justin Fields. Maybe Justin Fields as a junior will be different. But in the meantime, you've got a first-round quarterback. Fromm is a prototypical pocket passing stud who will, if he continues to evolve next year, be a first-round quarterback. And that's if he leaves early. He might still have 2 years left because everybody seems to love staying in Athens. So why in the world would you be trying to keep Justin Fields happy when Jake Fromm is clearly the better quarterback? It doesn't make any sense to me. Georgia snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Fromm was phenomenal. And that leads me into, well, first of all, are there any questions about the Georgia-Alabama game? I thought that Georgia gave this game away. I thought that they should have been able, that missed field goal by Blankenship, by Hot Rod, was a massive play. But other than that, I thought that it was a ugly performance by Georgia down the stretch. Georgia, at the moment in time when they could least afford to do it, Georgia. And let me say this also. I think Jalen Hurts is one of the best comeback stories that we have ever seen in college football. It would have been easy for Jalen Hurts, having been humiliated on the largest stage of his life, having his starting job yanked from him and handed to Tua, to turn tail and run and never return at all to Alabama. I got to give this guy credit because he did something that is incredibly uncommon in this day and age. As I have aged, what I have come to respect more and more is consistent excellence. Not excellence one time, not excellence two times, a quality of work that is going to show up and do the job every single day. I think about that with my radio show. I aspire every day to put on as good of a 3-hour radio show as exists in the country in the world of sports. And if I do a really good job one day and I do a crappy job the next 4 days, it doesn't matter. And I see this all the time in our modern day society where people only want to do their best and work hard on a small offshoot of their overall responsibility. Let me give you an example. When I started Outkick several years ago, I believed that there were going to be a ton of other people who were like me and would come in and want to write on the site and do an incredible job and continue to do it time after time after time. You know what I found out? The reason why I have succeeded is not because I'm infinitely more talented than everybody else or because my hair is better. It's because I work harder. I work harder than almost anybody in sports media. And what I have found is the harder I work, the more opportunities I get. I could sit around and point to other people that I think are doing things and getting paid more for what they do, which is a fraction of what I do. But instead, I just have shown up every day and continue to work hard. And so when I see a guy like Jalen Hurts, who has been humiliated on the largest stage, who decides, you know what, instead of leaving and going somewhere else, instead of chasing success elsewhere, I'm going to show up and continue to work as hard as I can every day. And when I get that opportunity again, I am going to go out and I am going to dominate. And that's what we saw from Jalen Hurts. In one of the best comeback stories, I was there standing on the sideline, rooting unabashedly for Jalen Hurts to succeed. Because the storyline of his life from 11 months, from I am humiliated on the national stage, I have lost my starting job at the University of Alabama, to being able to work so hard that you come back. I mean, think about the amazing trajectory of the last 11 months. Alabama put in a backup quarterback to beat Georgia, and then they put in the backup quarterback who was the former starter to beat Georgia as well. And I don't believe they could have won either game if they had stuck with the guy who was initially starting. Maybe Tua, if he hadn't gotten injured. It's hard to tell. It is a utter and complete difficulty in general to even think about. It's wild. What an unbelievable story. What a lesson about being a hard worker. It's like, I get all these people all day long who will email me and they're like, hey, can you come meet me to have coffee? I get more people emailing me wanting to meet for coffee than anybody on the planet. And I get the sense that people believe that if somehow they sit down with me, that I'm going to give them like the benefit of whatever brilliance I have learned over the years, and it's going to somehow make them successful. And do you know what I have found? There's no magic success. Unless you happen to be born and your parents are filthy rich and you're inheriting a company. Unless you have that huge fortune of being born on third base. The vast majority of the people I know who are successful got there by working harder than everybody else. And it's like, oh, what's the shortcut? There isn't a shortcut. You wake up every day for the next 40 years of your life and you bust your ass. And at the end, if you've done a good job, you're going to find yourself be pretty successful. Most people don't want to bust their ass. Most people don't want to work. Most people certainly don't want to work hard. Most people don't want to put themselves out there. And that's what I thought was so incredible about Jalen Hurts. Day after day in a public arena, grind, and then when you get the opportunity, dominate. That's what Jalen Hurts did. It's a phenomenal story. I was rooting for him. I think it's one of the best things we've ever seen. And by the way, the SEC championship game, this is amazing, by the way. The SEC championship game set a all-time record going all the way back to 1992, I believe it was, for the second highest SEC championship game rating of all time. It's the biggest rating for a college football game in 7 years, since Alabama and LSU played back in 2011. What is the story there? The SEC only gets paid $3.4 million for the SEC championship game. Tonight's Monday Night Football game between the Eagles and the Redskins will cost ESPN over $100 million. You want to talk about, and I keep hitting this because I'm so blown away by it, the most undervalued asset in all of sports media is by far the SEC on CBS package. They only pay $55 million a year. That's a package that's probably worth $250 million a year, if not more, depending on who ends up bidding. Wild. Just an incredible angle to think about. I don't know who's going to win that bidding rights, but I think it's going to be pretty substantial. All right, my reaction to the College Football Selection Committee's decisions. I think they got it right. It's easy in this day and age to get onto your soapbox and be angry about every decision that's made. But I think ultimately the College Football Playoff Committee has to balance out two decisions whenever they set the College Football Playoff Committee. Best and most deserving. Who is the best team and who is the most deserving team? And sometimes those correspond. Alabama and Clemson were the best and the most deserving teams. They were the 1 and 2. The only regret I would have as a larger media culture is I think we didn't debate Notre Dame enough. I think there's a legitimate debate to be had about whether Notre Dame is good enough that their deserving 12-0 schedule was worthy of being put into the college football playoff. Because I think Notre Dame is substantially worse than the other teams that we were considering down the stretch. I think Ohio State would beat Notre Dame. I think Georgia would beat Notre Dame. I think Oklahoma would beat Notre Dame. I think Clemson would beat Notre Dame. And I think Alabama would beat Notre Dame. So I think there should have been more discussion about whether or not Notre Dame belonged, given the fact they only played 12 games, given the fact that many of those games they were not that impressive in, given the fact of what happened last time we put Notre Dame in a major signature game like this, and they played Alabama, and they got waxed off the field. I don't believe that Notre Dame has a chance to beat Clemson. I know they would not have been able to beat Alabama. I think it would have been ugly. I think it would have been really ugly, and I think that's a debate that was worth having. Having said that, I think the committee got it right. Because I do think of the three teams that were left battling for the fourth spot, ultimately I think you can't say to Notre Dame, you're 12-0, but we don't believe in you. There's no way to leave them out. Stop talking about UCF. All due respect to UCF, they're not good. UCF is an 8-4, 9-3 football team if they played in the SEC. I'm not sure that they would be 8-4. I think Missouri went 8-4 in the SEC. I think Missouri would run UCF off the field. I don't think it would be a close game. I think Missouri would win the game by 20 points. It's not in any way remotely interesting that UCF should be in the running. They aren't. They would get crushed. Stop with the UCF talk. Here is, I think you had to put Notre Dame in at 12-0, but I think the debate should have been more robust than it was. And I also think Notre Dame should have been the 4. I think Notre Dame should be playing against Alabama because I think Oklahoma is a lot better than Notre Dame. So if I were seeding, I would have put Notre Dame at 4, and I would have narrowly gotten Notre Dame in above Georgia because I would have ultimately said, you know what, Notre Dame went 12-0, they couldn't have done any more, and Georgia could have done more. I think Georgia's better, but ultimately I kept coming back the more I thought about it to that performance against LSU. And LSU rolled, dominated, destroyed Georgia. And as good as Georgia looked against Alabama, they can't explain to me why they were that bad against LSU. I think LSU is just a pretty good SEC team. LSU did not roll that many other good teams all year. And they dominated and destroyed in that game Georgia. Was not a close contest. And so as a result, I think that Georgia had already put their mulligan in. and they had to beat Alabama to get in. Maybe if it had gone to like 7 overtimes or something like that, I would have reconsidered. But I'm telling you that the committee got it right because Oklahoma should have certainly been in over Ohio State. Now, you all know my preference is an 8-team playoff. I think you should take the top 8 teams in the College Football Selection Committee's rankings. Right now, that would mean Alabama going up against UCF. That would mean number 2 Clemson going up against what's the overall rankings right now? Let me pull them up right here because I want to continue to beat this drum until eventually it happens. I'd be fine signing the paperwork to never expand beyond 8. Alabama against UCF, Clemson against Michigan, Notre Dame against Ohio State, and Oklahoma against Georgia. That's what should happen. And the first 4 in the playoff rankings should get to host it at home. Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma should all be hosting home playoff games. That would be amazing to see. That would be an incredible breakdown. It would be fantastic for college football fans everywhere. That's what I would like to see, is an 8-team playoff. But given all of the circumstances, I think they got it right. All right, couple of things additionally, and moving on. Kareem Hunt. I put up a poll question for you guys because I was curious to see what the answer was. And I'm going to look at the most recent numbers. There are, right now, you can go vote in this on my college football poll. I said Kareem Hunt is on waivers today, and I don't believe he's been picked up right now, and won't play for the rest of the year. Would you be okay with your favorite NFL team claiming him to plan to use him next year? I'm genuinely curious to see the results. No idea what to expect. Yes. 21,000 of you have voted. 21,000 of you have voted in the poll so far. Yes got 54% of the vote. 46% said no. Looking at those numbers, I would claim him on waivers if I thought he could help my football team. Because the 46% who said no will fade over the next couple of weeks, over the next couple of months, certainly by next year. What Joe Mixon did was infinitely worse than what Kareem Hunt has done, and Joe Mixon's never missed an NFL game. What Tyreek Hill did is infinitely worse than what Kareem Hunt did, and Tyreek Hill has never missed an NFL game. Kareem Hunt's talent exceeds his problems. If I were an NFL executive who needed a running back, I would put in a claim for waivers for Kareem Hunt. Because I think by the time I did that, by the time Kareem Hunt got out in the community and did a few decent things, if we put him on a zero tolerance perspective, you cut him immediately if he does anything bad. If he doesn't, then he turns into a good running back in the NFL, and you have got him, which is almost unheard of, for virtually no cost at all. Okay? Now, I watched the video from TMZ. I hate when anybody gets punched, right? When anybody gets shoved, when any violence happens. I'm crazy maybe because I think you should never hit a girl. But if you're a grown-ass man, unless you're being paid for it or unless you are defending your family or your friends, no, from an actual threat of violence, no grown man should fight another grown man. Hey, I'm 39 years old. The only way I am ever going to fight someone is if you are threatening my family or my loved ones, or I'm being paid an exorbitant amount of money to fight. This idea that men fight is stupid. We have, I think, justifiably said that it's awful for men to hit women. It's also pretty fucking stupid for men to hit other men when you are a grown adult. What are you thinking when you actually get into a fight and there's no actually danger? Especially, this is the case, if you are a multi-million-dollar athlete. How are you this dumb that you would put yourself into a position where you get into a fight at all? It just doesn't make any sense to me. We're not fighting on the African savannah for who's going to be able to get food and who's not, and somebody's going to die. This is not caveman lifestyle where there's the diminished number of resources. It doesn't make sense the vast majority of time for you to get into a fight. Why would I let somebody hit me in the head? It makes no sense. It's nonsensical. But having said that, I watched the video of Kareem Hunt, and I think he's stupid, and I think he's an idiot, and I think he has made a bad decision. But the idea that what happened on that video is unacceptable for an NFL player made me say, wait a minute, what are you talking about? There are many NFL players who have done much worse than Kareem Hunt that are on NFL rosters right now. I'm with the majority of the people in this poll right now that believe if their team decided to put in a claim for Kareem Hunt, I would be okay with it. I wouldn't be outraged and demanding all these actions and everything else. I wouldn't be outraged by it. Guy made a bad decision. He did something dumb. He's paid consequences. He just got kicked off of a team that might win the Super Bowl. He's been thoroughly embarrassed. At some point in time, I believe in redemption. I think people do dumb things, and if they're punished for them, then I think they have the right to earn a living. And I also will continue to say this. The NFL, the focus of stupid people in this country is, why didn't the NFL do a better investigation? Smart people in this country say, why in the world is the NFL conducting a domestic violence investigation in the first place? Authorities looked at this evidence and said, we can't prosecute because we don't believe that this is a crime that a jury would convict or that a DA could bring charges on and get a conviction, because it's kind of a messy video, because we don't know all the details surrounding it, because when I watched it, Kareem Hunt shoves a guy who then hits a girl and then he kicks her. Is it ideal? No. Is it inexcusable? Yes. Would I be furious beyond measure if one of my boys ever did that to a woman? Yes. But would I believe that my sons never deserved another chance to make a living in their chosen profession because of a 30-second hallway video in a hotel room when they were 24 years old? No, I wouldn't. And if that's the standard that I would apply as a father, then it's the same standard that I would apply as an owner or a GM. It's easy to get up on your soapbox and be angry and be outraged and talk about how the NFL doesn't care about women and scream to the high heavens so everybody can hopefully join you in the outrage police. The more interesting question, which is rarely asked, is what are the limits of second chances? What can you do such that you never deserve a chance to play in the NFL again? Ray Caruth, to me, never deserves a chance to play in the NFL again. He murdered his pregnant fiance and permanently nearly killed and physically disabled his child. Okay? That guy doesn't ever deserve the right, in my opinion, to play in the NFL again. I would never pay him a dime on my team. Kareem Hunt, I would sign him. I'd put him on the discipline list and make sure that he had a zero tolerance perspective. Joe Mixon probably wouldn't sign him. I saw that video. He hit the girl in the face, broke her jaw in two places. That would be something that would take him off my board. I wouldn't be comfortable paying Joe Mixon to be on my team. I think everybody needs to make decisions about where their line is, and I think everybody's a little bit different. But this is not a prosecutable case. This is not something with Kareem Hunt where the charges were brought and he beat them, even though the evidence suggested that he shouldn't have, as often happens with high-profile athletes. I understand why the Chiefs acted as they did. It's because, frankly, I think a lot of people would have started asking questions about Tyreek Hill, because Tyreek Hill is far worse beating and choking his pregnant girlfriend than what Kareem Hunt did. But given the circumstances, I'd put in a waiver claim for him if I thought he could make my team better and I needed a running back. I understand that that's not politically correct now, where everybody has to constantly get on their indignation meter and go off into a different direction. But I believe this guy deserves a second chance. I didn't see behavior from him that was so egregious that I wouldn't have him represent my team going forward. That's me. You can disagree. 22,000 of you voted, and I'm on the side of 54% of you, and that I would be okay with my team signing Kareem Hunt, knowing he's going to be suspended for the rest of this year, that he could come back next year if he stayed out of trouble and got counseling and put his life back in a better position. My Redskins-Eagles pick. Redskins-Eagles pick, I am on the Eagles -6, and I am on the under. I don't think the Eagles are going to put up, the Redskins are going to put up much in the way of offense. All right, also, in the NFL playoff race, the AFC, we'll talk about the NFC a little bit tomorrow, and maybe I'll also just talk about this in general more tomorrow. But to me, the play here is pretty straightforward. There are 6 teams that are eliminated in the AFC that have nothing left to play for other than draft position. Those 6 teams are as follows. Pour a drink out for them. The Cincinnati Bengals, the Cleveland Browns, the Buffalo Bills, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the New York Jets, and the Oakland Raiders. In the AFC, those 6 teams have been eliminated. It looked like the Chargers, what a performance they put up last night. It looks like the Chargers are going to be one of the wild card teams. The other wild card team will come from this group. The Baltimore Ravens, the Miami Dolphins, the Indianapolis Colts, the Denver Broncos, and the Tennessee Titans. I think it's going to take getting to 10-6. I think 10-6 will be the second wild card team. Whoever can get to 10-6 among the Titans, the Broncos, the Colts, the Dolphins, and the Ravens will be in the playoffs. Yes, the Chargers can still win the division, and if they do, then guess what? The Kansas City Chiefs will be the other playoff team, all right? So I feel like one wild card is already taken. I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. If you enjoy this show, share it with your friends. I'll be on Lock It In here in a half hour. 1/2 hour from now, I will be on FS1 making gambling picks. I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. This, as always, has been Outkick.